What's up? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Holly and this is my booktube channel. I talk about books and reading and everything in that realm, and I'm usually drinking coffee, as you can tell. So today I'm actually drinking a new one. It's called the Texas Pecan Blend. I think I actually have it with me. Yes, I did bring it over. It's the HEB Texas Pecan Blend. It says that it's medium bodied with creamy caramel and Texas pecan flavors. And yeah, it's really good. I've never tried it before, but I enjoy it. By the way, do you say pecan or pecan? Because if you say pecan, we can't be friends. Totally kidding. Say it however you want. Tomato, tomato. But here in Texas, it's pecan. So today we are filming my March wrap-ups. It was an interesting reading month for me. It wasn't bad, and I had a lot of really good reads. I just didn't read as much as I thought I was going to. I don't know what happened this month. Life was just crazy busy. I really don't know how people read like 30 books in a month or even 15. I mean, that is amazing if you can do that. I just haven't figured out how to do that. I'm lucky if I can read 3 or 4, but you know what? I think that's important for people to know, that it doesn't matter how many you're reading, as long as you're reading and enjoying something, it counts. So first up, I read A Time to Kill by John Grisham. This is a legal thriller novel, and I think it's his little series centered around the attorney Jake Brigance. And this book is pretty amazing. I loved it. I flew through it. I enjoyed it so much. Essentially, you're following the main character, Jake, and he is a defense attorney. So he defends people who have been accused of crimes. And in this book, he has to defend a man who essentially took matters into his own hands when these other 2 men brutalized his young daughter. We'll just put it that way to try to keep it PG. So essentially they committed this horrible act against his daughter, and as any father would, he kind of lost his mind and took matters into his own hands, and in this book he is on trial for their murder. And it is in the Deep South in like the 1980s, so there's a lot of racial tensions because the 2 men that committed the crime against his daughter were white, and the man who's on trial in this book is black, and there's a ton of racial tensions. The KKK gets involved. It's a whole hot mess, but I mean, it is one of those on the edge of your seats. I mean, just if you love stories about justice and legal thrillers and just all of that, you will probably love this book. I know I did, and I recently picked up the second Jake Brigance novel that John Grisham wrote, so I'm anxious to get to the next book in his story. Next up, I read Zodiac by Robert Graysmith. This was my true crime book of the month. I typically try to read a true crime book every month. I am in a true crime book club, but the one that they were reading this month hadn't come out in paperback yet, and I just really didn't feel like spending the money, so I read one that I already owned, and it was so good. You never know with nonfiction whether you're going to love it or hate it, or if it's going to be super dry, but this was written so well. The author did a really good job of telling it like a story, but also keeping it highly factual, highly accurate, and it's just incredible. The Zodiac killer kind of had this reign of terror, if you will, from like the late 1960s and onward. The back of the book, as you've probably heard me describe it, says that the official tally of his victims was 6, but he claimed there were 37 he killed, and they think that the actual number might have reached 50, and he was never ever caught, which is just incredible to me that they had, if you read this book, you'll know they had like this one main suspect that after reading this, I'm convinced it was him. But I mean, being an attorney, I know that you need a lot more than that in order to convict someone. I just got a phone call, so I'm not sure what I was talking about. Where was I? I know we were talking about the Zodiac. But anyway, I think I was saying something about when you're a prosecutor or an attorney, I know that you need a lot more evidence than you would think to convict someone. So even though the law enforcement authorities had what I consider a ton of evidence, maybe it wasn't enough. I don't know. It's crazy to me. Now, the Zodiac, he might be dead by now, because if you were, let's say, 30 back in the early 70s, I don't know that you'd still be alive today. If you are, you're really stinking old. So even though he was never caught, he's very likely no longer among the living. So maybe that's a comforting thought. I don't like that he got to run around free for all this time, but in any event, it was a really good book. If you like true crime, this one was so good. I really enjoyed it. And there's so many like photographs and pictures and images and things to look at as well, and screenshots. I guess they're not screenshots, just scans of the actual letters that the Zodiac was sending to law enforcement and reporters and kind of taunting them. So you get to read the actual letters, and oh, it was just such a fun time. Really enjoyed it. That's Zodiac by Robert Graysmith. And this book, Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. I loved this book. I think this was probably my favorite book of the month, and the other two were really, really good. So it was hard to pick, but I think this was probably my favorite book this month. It was so stinking good. I wasn't sure what I was gonna think because I've heard mixed reviews. Some people love it and some people didn't like it at all. So I wasn't sure what to think, but I absolutely loved it, and I have been Googling and searching for more books like this. If you have read this and you know a book that is similar to it that you think I would like, send it my way. Leave me a comment below. I'm hungry for some more sci-fi horror books. So essentially the premise of this book is you're following the main character, Claire, and this is a sci-fi book, so it's obviously futuristic. She is kind of like a salvage crew captain. Essentially, she goes out into space and tries to salvage different things, and she's got different jobs out there. And when the book starts out, she and her crew are out there on a completely different mission, and they happen to stumble upon this spaceship that is essentially what we would think of as like a cruise. So like a cruise liner type of ship, but in space. And this particular one, they crafted to make it look exactly like the Titanic. So it's a spaceship, but everything in it looks like the Titanic, which is really interesting. And years and years and years before this character finds it, it kind of just went off the map. It got lost. No one ever knew what became of it or the people on board. And so they thought it was just lost out in space somewhere. So they were really freaked. You could hear that obnoxious noise. That's my clothes dryer. It practically screams at you to let you know that it's done. But anyway, they find this spaceship, the Titanic spaceship thing, and stumble upon it, and there's typically like a reward for finding stuff like this. So they go on board to try to get an artifact or something off the ship so they can take it back and prove to people that they found it. Well, when they do that, things start going wrong. That is when the horror part comes in and things start going really weird and they start finding creepy, horrific stuff on board. The back describes it as whispers in the dark, flickers of movement, messages scrawled in blood, and she has to fight to hold on to her sanity and find out what really happened before she meets the same fate. And it's so good because Claire, your main character, you're following it from her point of view, and she's kind of an unreliable narrator, but not one that will annoy you. I don't think. She's one that, because of some things in her past, she has some mental stuff going on. I'll just put it that way. I'm going to try not to spoil it. So you're not really sure if what she's thinking or feeling or observing is stuff that you can fully trust, but you do find yourself trusting her as a person. She's someone that is likable, that you root for. You're just kind of with her in not being sure of what she's observing exactly. I don't know if that makes any sense, but hopefully it does. It's just, oh my gosh, it was so good. It needs to be a movie. This would be a fantastic movie, especially if you're a fan of the Alien movie with Sigourney Weaver. You'd love this. It's very similar So pick it up if you like sci-fi horror. I absolutely loved it. I highly recommend it. So there you have it. That is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. And the last book that I attempted to read was The Dark Tower by Stephen King, the first book, so The Gunslinger. Y'all, we gotta talk about this book. I don't know what to think about this book. I got halfway through, and when I say halfway, I mean literally. I put the page number into Goodreads and it said 50% of the way through, so I was literally halfway through the book, and it's not a very big book. And the reason I don't have it with me is because it was due back at the library yesterday, so I had to return it. But anyway, I got halfway through, and it was a struggle to get that far. Not that it was hard to read, but trying to figure out what on God's green earth was happening in that book was very difficult. I'm not someone that partakes in recreational drugs, but I feel like if you do, it might help, because the whole book felt like an acid trip. I don't know what was going on, and I learned that there are like a couple different versions of this book, and I read what I guess is the original version, not the revised version, so maybe that's why. Maybe the revised version is much easier to get on board with. And I can't say I hated it. I don't know, hate's a strong word, but there's no context. It's like you flipped on the TV and you're halfway through a movie and you have no idea what's happened up until that point. You're just supposed to try to figure it out. And there's very little context, and it's kind of slowly builds up the main character and tries to explain him, but it doesn't do a very good job. And you aren't even sure what kind of world you're in. It's like this weird, I don't know, post-apocalyptic world, and nothing makes sense. And I was just so confused. But what's weird is that Stephen King fans all love this book. And I'm like, okay, hold on now. Is this kind of like the Nickelback effect, where all these people claim that they hate Nickelback when actually they really do? Is it kind of the opposite with this book, where everyone claims that they love it just because no one wants to admit that it actually kind of stinks? I don't know. Is it like that? Let me know. Be honest with me, because I'm struggling. I feel like a failed Stephen King fan because I was just not enjoying it. But there's so many people that loved it, and I'm like, oh, what am I missing here? What am I missing? So like I said, I got halfway through it and had to return it back to the library, and I don't know if it's worth rechecking it out and finishing the last half, because I'm not kidding y'all, I wanted to throw it across the room. I was that frustrated by it. Maybe I'm very literal, maybe I'm very black and white, like you need to just spell it out. None of this like airy-fairy alluding to stuff nonsense, just spit it out. What is going on? Who are the characters? Why do we care about them? What's the plot? Like, put it out there for me. I don't know. Like I said, that was the one book I really struggled with this month, and I'm not sure what to think. So it's kind of a soft DNF at this point. I kept staring at it all month and had no desire to go back to it. And maybe that's how you know you just need to put the book down. I don't know. Because I feel like if I didn't like that book, how in the world am I supposed to get through all the others in the Dark Tower series? I don't know. I know I have a lot of friends here on BookTube who love Stephen King and who really like the Dark Tower and the Gunslinger, so they might come for me, they might try to explain it, I don't know. Either way, I'm curious to know y'all's thoughts. And that's essentially all the books that I read this month. Like I said, it was kind of a weird, slow month. I just had a lot going on, and I even had to go see my eye doctor in the middle of the month because I was suffering from some really bad eye strain, and I'm having to wear, as you can see, reading glasses when I read and do computer work because I wear contacts normally, but apparently that wasn't enough. Apparently I'm just at that age now where I need some extra help, so. And I'm not even old, I'm only 31, y'all. How can I need reading glasses? I don't know. But they're helping. I feel much better, way less eyeball headaches. So hopefully reading next month will be a lot more productive. But all in all, I had 3 really good books that I enjoyed and loved, and one that I just can't explain. I don't know how I feel about that book or why I wanted to throw it across the room, but that's just the way it went. So let me know what you guys read this month, and if you've read The Gunslinger, give me your thoughts on that too, because I need to know if I'm completely alone in the I didn't like The Gunslinger camp. So, y'all have a good week. I will see you in my next video. Bye, y'all.